grandmother was a very,
Wait.
what would I say?
There we go. Okay.
She was a cougar. Strong
And her grandfather was holding.
Corajuda, ok.
Evil.
Well, here.
Era corajuda.
We want to go
You can
there.
sit over there. Yeah.
She said she was very bossy.
Just maybe Corajuda.
Where did I keep?
Yeah.
Just for their
Corajuda is,
Así actuar after that.
Yeah, you can put it in front of them.
yeah, you got it in the
Right in front where the
In between them.
in between, that
Facing
way,
this way.
right here?
Yeah.
Yep, right there. Okay, so go ahead.
And, well, when my mother, when I was born, she told my father, why don't we let Rosa go and stay with your mom, or with your mama, you know, all the time, you know, maybe that would soften her up, because she was very, what would I say?
argumentative.
And yeah, and she hadn't been happy when my father had married my mother,
Why?
and my mother tried to do everything she could, you know, to please her mother-in-law, and she even asked my father to move them, you know, because there were two houses, one house in each lot that she had gotten as a wedding present, and my father was paying rent for my grandmother about 2 blocks away. We could be about 4 blocks, you know, and she said, why be paying rent over there when we have this extra house here? So then my father moved my grandmother and my uncle to live in the extra house. And then when Polo was born, well, I was always over there with my grandmother, but they just lived just at the yard separated the two houses. And my mother, every day, you know, after she finished at noon, after she finished her housework and clean the kitchen and everything, she would go and sit with my grandmother in the porch. We always did that, you know. And and my grandmother had become very attached to me since I was a baby. So she thought, well, you know, having Rosa all the time, you know, maybe it will soften her up, you know, with her love for Rosa. And that's how come it was. But every noon, when my father came home to eat, I would go and eat with my father and my mother. And then I go back to my grandmother. I slept with my grandmother, you know, and my grandmother doted on me. She bought me whatever I wanted. My uncle would give her money to buy things for herself, and instead, if I wanted new shoes, she could go and get them for me. Or if I showed her a dress that I wanted, she could go and buy it for me. She even once, I like this orange dress that was in the window, and she went to buy it for me, and they didn't have any more. And she asked, well, how about the dress in the window? What size is it? And it was my size. They said, well, I want that. And they had to sell it to her. So I lived with my grandmother until she passed away, that I was 10 years old. And then when my little sister was born, my grandmother was getting attached to her. But my little sister, at 5 months, 5.5 months, she contracted double pneumonia, and she passed away, because then they didn't have the cure for it. They were just, our family doctor had just found out about a cure for it, and he gave her the 4th dose, and told, well, we're starting her on this, and tomorrow that I come to see how much she has improved. In the morning that he went, my little sister passed away around midnight, and because she was very ill, you know, but he thought that medication was gonna help her. When he got there, he went in and was looking for the crib, you know, with the baby. And then my mother said, and he turned and he cried when he saw that my little sister had passed away. She was only 5.5 months, so, and her name was Josefina Alicia.
Josefina Alicia.
Yeah, Josefina after my dad, Josefina Alicia. And my grandmother, oh, what could I say? She went into her house, closed the doors, and she crying and crying and crying, you know, because my grandmother had been beside the baby all since she got sick. And I had heard the sirens, you know, the fire trucks had gone by, and I started crying. And my grandmother went to see, to calm me down. And while my grandmother went, my little sister passed away. Well, they say that my grandmother, you know, loving the child so much and being there, kind of like the baby couldn't go until my grandmother moved away from her. So and that's how come I had been living with my grandmother.
When were your brothers born?
And I slept with my grandmother, even when she was sick, until somebody told my mother, you know why your mother-in-law can't. Está retratando la cámara, viejito. Because your I forgot what I was saying.
You were saying about you slept with your grandmother.
Oh,
Until
you know what? Your mother-in-law can pass away because Rosa is sleeping with her. So, I had a friend that lived around the corner from where we live, that her mother had passed away and she lived with her grandmother. And the lady, you know, found out that that was the reason my grandmother couldn't pass away. So she went and told my mother, let Rosa come over to my house to stay with my granddaughter. And when that night that I went over to their house, suddenly at around midnight,
Was I snoring?
Suddenly at midnight, I heard crying. You know, la gente lloraba, gritaba.
I didn't even know I thought.
And I said, that crying is coming from my house. And they said, no. I said, I think it's dogs howling. No, okay, dogs howling. It was mi tía that had come, you know, from Monterey, you know, to be there for my grandmother's illness. And my mother, they started crying away, you know, really loud. And that's what I heard. Pero me dijeron que no, go back to sleep. Doña Felipita told me. And I went to sleep, but then in the morning, when I said, well, I'm going home, I found out that my grandmother had passed away. But they said the reason she couldn't go was because I was by her side, and while I was by her side, she couldn't go and leave me. Then I went back to with my mom and my dad. And then 8 years later, I met your dad and got married and left him.
Well, what happened to your brothers? Where did your brothers fall into place then?
Eh?
Where did your brothers fall into place there?
Polo was born 2 years after I was born.
Oh, so he was living
He
with...
was born in 1926,
I was born
July the 4th,
Oh, really?
1926.
July the 4th? I did not know that.
And then my little sister was born, I think it was in 1930. And my little brother in 1935.
Mm.
And,
And your little brother
on-
was named,
He was born on January 17,
And what was his name? His name was?
Raúl.
Raúl.
When your daddy and I married, my dad said that now he had a son named after his son, the son he had left.
Oh.
Quería mucho a tu papá. Mi mamá quería mucho a tu papá también. He didn't return the love as much. Pero él lo quería mucho. Y mi hermanita, well, I told you, she was born, I think, when 1930, y mi hermanito en 1935. Wait a minute.
January.
No, he passed away in 1935.
Oh.
On June the 11th, 1935. And he was 5.5 months old.
No, that was your sister,
Mm.
right? That was your sister who passed away at 5
My
and a half
little
months.
sister, I can't remember what month and date she was born or the year.
Mm.
but she was 5.5 when she died.
5.5 months.
She was 5.5 months when she died.
5.5 months. No?
And your little brother was how old?
5.5 years.
5.5
Oh.
years.
Out of a car accident.
And so that's why it was just following me left. But there had been a baby before me,
Mhm.
and his name was Manuel. They named him after some saint. Manuel, que creo que era el Santo Niño
Mm.
de Atoche or something, and that was his name, Manuel. And I think my bigger brother, I think, was about 2 years older than me.
Oh.
But he only lasted about 40 days.
Oh. Oh.
Oh.
Hmm.
Yeah, when I was born, my mother, was, all about that. She thought she could also lose me. Pero I survived.
Yes, you did.
And then I survived when we had the accident where my little brother was killed.
Mm.
I got cut right here. My ear was cut in half. I have pieces of glass inside my ear. And this one right here, this one, the doctor said that if I had just gone a little bit further, me hubiera cortado the artery there.
Wow.
Y Polo just got a scratch.
Mm.
My little brother flew out of the roof of the car. It was the canvas because it was a convertible. You could bring the
Convertible?
the roof down,
Mm.
and it was we had the part, and then like instead of the trunk was another seat.
Oh.
Rumble seat.
That face backwards.
But my
Rumble
little
seat.
brother.
Usually the full.
In Polo, well, there was the back of the front seat, where the driver was, and between there was a gap, como the front seat was like here, it ended, and then there was a gap, and the canvas roof. That's where it came, and then the trunk. But in this gap here, era flat. And Polo y mi hermanito were sitting there, you know. And Polo was behind me. And mi hermanito was on the left side. And when the car hit the pillar of the bridge, it hit and
Launch.
he was shot out of the car. And as the car came back, his body fell between the fender and the, ¿cómo se llama? Radiator. And he was crushed. And then the car went back again and hit again. So he was, but you know, and I was bleeding all over. I had a white
Blouse.
sailor dress, you know, with the collar like the sailors. And my little brother had a sailor suit that he loved to wear, and it didn't get as much blood because you could see him, and it seemed like he was just limp.
He was just limp.
He was just limp when they took him, you know. And I started screaming, "Come and help us, ayúdenos, ayúdenos." And there was a girl and her sister standing. There was a house there right across from where we hid. And I said, "Help us." And I tried to open the door because my mom was in the middle, my dad was driving, and I was on the other side of my mom. And I was able to get out of the car and started screaming, "Help us." And then I saw my father had my little brother's body, and he seemed like he was just limp, but he was broken all inside. And this lady that was going by in her car stopped because they had called the ambulance and he wasn't coming. So she said, "We shouldn't wait any time. Come on, I'll take you to the hospital." You know, she got us in the car, my mom and me, and my father with the baby in his arms. We got to the hospital. They took me to emergency, you know, to treat my wounds, and my little brother to another emergency room. And the doctor told my father that his little body was all broken inside. He said that he had serious injuries. But if he survived past 12, he would survive. But he said he might not
Be the same.
be, you know, strong anymore. He might be like handicapped for the rest of his life. And he barely made it to midnight when he passed away. So the doctor told him, you know, maybe God saw fit to take him because he wasn't gonna be, you know, completely recovered. It would be a long struggle with him, all broken up and all that. So, and I kept asking for my little brother because I was crying. And when we headed that way, I told my dad, I said, "I don't want to go that way." I said, "Why don't we go and visit los compadres?" Y Papa, he kept on going, you know. He had, you know, he had been drinking. And we had gone to clean my grandma and my uncle's graves because it was the anniversary of their death, a year after. And when we were coming back, he decided to come through there. And I got like a premonition and started crying. I didn't want to go that way. And then he said, "Don't cry, manita. Mira, yo no estoy llorando." Y le dije, "Ay, ¿tú qué sabes?" Oh my, that hurt me very much because I said, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen to him. I just knew that I was afraid. And then I had told him, you know, ¿qué sabes tú? And then to find out that he had died, and they wouldn't tell me because I couldn't cry because I had been still shocked. So it it was terrible, you know, and I kept asking and asking and say, cuando estés mejor, te llevamos a verlo. But I was still in the hospital when they buried him, and I heard the church bell toll when they took him to the church, you know, so I said, I felt something, you know, and then before I went home, my father told me that my little brother had passed away. My mother just offered a cord, you know, she was caught between your grandpa and me, and Polo had just barely a scar on his head. So it was a terrible blow to me, you know, when I learned that my little brother had passed away. And my dad almost went crazy, and he couldn't even see, you know, my little brother's picture. We had it up on the piano, and we had to put it away, you know, turn it upside down, you know, and because he started drinking more también, and he blamed himself for it, and everybody would tell my mom, why don't you leave your, you know, Jose, because he caused that. I think he wanted to kill you, that's why would they tell my mother.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know what she said, no, it was an accident. It was an accident, you know, so.
And grandfather was a printer then, or?
Eh?
Grandfather was a printer, abuelito? What did he do for a living?
He was a printer.
A printer?
He had a very good job. He learned, he started working for that printing company when he was 13 years old, also like your dad. But his was a job more, you know, and he and the owner liked my father, and my father became manager. He was that's where he learned to be a printer, and then he had the other people working there under his.
He was apprentice, right?
Yeah, and then of course he also managed in the front. It was office supplies, and then in the long back room. Was you seen the picture where my dad was sitting before one of esos, type, you know, and then to the side there was another big room where they had the tables where like what they printed if they had to be folded, you know, like invitation and all that, and they had this made of bone, you know, like a comb, but all flat, you know, and with that one they would go like that to fold the invitations.
So they did everything by hand. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like now, everything's.
I used to
Wow.
go there every Saturday, and I used to sit by the back door where the printing presses were, and they would give me this bowl with nickels and pennies. And because every Saturday the people, the beggars, would come to the door and would hand out, you know, money to them. So I was in charge of that. And then in the front, I would take the things down, you know, bottles of ink and the displays that I had on the shelves, and I would dust them. Y me pagaban. I got paid for that. I love to do that. In the mornings I would do that. And then in the afternoon I would go to the movies every Saturday.
Her money.
My father would, I would go with my father after lunch, and we stopped there at the Royal, and he left me there at the door, and I went in by myself to the movies.
By yourself.
Or sometimes Polo would go with me. And I love to go to the movies.
How old were you then?
Yeah. I think I can't remember really.
Maybe about 14, 15?
Eh?
About 15, 14 years old?
No, I was younger than
Younger,
that.
like 12?
Like 6.
Maybe 12, 13 years old,
Ah.
I think. And then, well, all my friends went to the movies. They would all, walk sometimes 2 or 3 together, and then my dad took me, and led me at the door, and I would go in and join them. And after the movie, I would walk over there to the printing, to the office equipment. Okay. And during the week, está durmiendo también. During the week, sometimes I would go in the afternoon after school, and that's when I did the cleaning. I love to do that.
Yeah.
So I was born on, knew everything about the printing shop. And then my father, like they called in orders my father took the orders and he went and delivered them. And he would pick me up. And me and Polo, sometimes Polo would go along, sometimes only me. And then I stayed in the car while he went into the offices where they had orders stored.
Wow. That's interesting.
I have happy memories of that. Except after my father took to drinking more and more, that he lost his job. Lico, the owner, his name was Federico, but they called him Lico, and his wife. They had wanted my dad to stay on, and handle all the business while their son, I don't know what Fred Jr. was doing. They had a son and a daughter, Fred Jr. and Irene. But then after my daddy started drinking at noon, then he started drinking in the morning, at noon, and after work, until finally he didn't show up right at the time he should, and he did, breaking of the alcohol. So he said, I hate to do it, but I'm gonna have to fire you.
Let you go.
And then my dad would go and, well, most of his friends were printers, had printing shop. He would go and do jobs for them and find, jobs that he could go in and do in their printing shops. And he found a job with this widow that her husband had passed away, and she was left in charge of the printing. She also had, the office supply and the printing. But he kept on drinking, and he wouldn't show up, and here the lady comes to the house, and he would tell her that it was because of my little brother, that had passed away. And here se abrazaban, and she would cry with him, and or it got too much, and he said, well, I have to let you go. And then, well, when your daddy and I married, that daddy left for the army. It was a 22nd of February, and I went with my father to the parade. And after the parade, we stopped to see Mrs. Cantrell, the owner of the business. And she was by herself, since it was a Saturday. And people that came to the parade stopped there to buy things. They had come from Laredo. So I stepped in and started helping the people. And after, all the people were gone, she thanked me for it, and that she loved the way I handled the people. And then she went and wanted me to work for her. And she dijo to Papa, if I had, maybe we would have ended up with the business. Pero Pile, he stepped in and he said, she's not gonna go to work. She can't go to work. She's a married woman, she can't go to work. And your daddy was far away, so. But
Oh, Daddy was already in the
That-
service?
Yeah.
You'd already met Daddy?
Well, your
Okay.
daddy left 10 days after we got married.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
How did you meet Daddy?
How did I meet him? At the plaza. I saw this man. Emily loved this story that I saw this man that, this guy, this handsome guy. I had seen your daddy in March of that year, the 1940. And your grandma and I were standing, we were gonna cross the street when there comes this orange truck. And your daddy wasn't driving it, he was just on the other side of, on the passenger side. And we stopped to let the truck go by. Instead of us crossing it, that the truck should stop. No, we stopped. And I saw this guy and I thought, wow. And then he didn't even see me standing there, I think. And then we got to, it was just the block before my aunt's house. And we got to my aunt's house and I told my cousin, I saw this guy, that wow. I said, I like that guy. And then I didn't see him again, so I had kind of forgotten that I had seen a guy that had kind of made my heart beat, And then in December, we were at the plaza, and my friend was engaged to this guy that, and I always went with her, and he always kept bringing somebody because, well, I was la estufita, and I didn't let them be by themselves because I was always with them. And he always tried to introduce me to somebody, and I would see them, and I said, oh, okay, well, we met, goodbye. Yeah. And then I turned to him and I said, why are you bringing anybody? I don't care. I said, I don't want you bringing anybody just because you think that I need to have a date so that you can, be with Mamie, my friend. And then when that night,